Episode number 221 of the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. My guest today is Nancy May. Nancy is a really gifted spirit baby expert and intuitive fertility educator, and she is somebody who I had on the podcast on episode number 52, so you can go there if you want to get a little bit more of her background. But she's been doing this for over 30 years, and she works with people around the world, helping them build their dreams and break through limitations and create richer, more fulfilling lives and achieve greater results than they have ever known before. Nancy is the creator and Hay House award-winning author of the Energetic Fertility Method, Tools for a Healthy Conception and Beyond, and has appeared on Open to Hope TV, hosted her own international radio show, and shared the stage with world-renowned teachers. Nancy has a Master of Arts in Clinical Psychology, a Master of Science in Cognitive Psychology, and a Master's Certification in Intuitive Medicine. She also holds a Sports Psychology Certificate and is a Certified Usability Analyst through Human Factors International as well as non-denominational minister. As a sought-after life transitions coach and professional speaker, Nancy offers inspiring workshops to audiences around the world, as well as transformational in-depth coaching programs that help clients achieve new heights of success, meaning, and spiritual aliveness. Welcome to the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. I'm Michelle, a fertility acupuncturist here to provide you with resources on how to create a wholesome approach to your fertility journey. So welcome back to the podcast, Nancy. So for the listeners, Nancy has been on the podcast before on episode 52, where she talks about more about her background, if you guys want to hear that. But today we're going to have a lot of interesting conversations. We just had a little pre-talk. Both of us are kind of like go with the flow, whatever wants to come through. And there are no rules here on this podcast. You could talk about whatever comes through. So I'm really excited to have you come on. We just talked about a couple of things. We talked about loss and how that can hold people back energetically. And then we also talked about even the energy of the planet and how spirit babies, what role they have right now, and like what the energy that you're feeling as an intuitive. So I'd love to start wherever you want to start.
I love this. Well, first of all, I want to say, Michelle, it's always such a joy talking with you, and I'm excited to be back on your podcast and sharing some, I would say, very timely information with people. And my sense is that we'll just start with talking about how the energy on the planet is shifting.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of us are feeling it. If you're empathic or have tap into your intuition at all, you're probably noticing some changes in yourself and in others, in how everything's just kind of coming into play on the planet right now. And I want to talk in particular about the spirit babies, this realm that I delve into and I work with every day. I have found, I've been doing this work for about 12 years now professionally. And what I have found is that I seem to work with a certain subset of these spirit babies. And it's never the full spirit baby realm. I remember talking with Walter McKitchen, the author of Spirit Babies, before he passed on. And we talk about how the spirit baby realm was just this fun, bright, light energy, place to be, in comparison to like the place in the spirit realm where new souls cross over into. Like if someone has just passed, it's a very different energy. So imagine being in this beautiful, energetic space, getting excited to come to your journey for this earth time here. And you're being called to this planet to help raise the vibration. Mm-hmm. That is what I'm seeing with the spirit babies now. There's a lot of spirit babies who want to come all over this planet to be able to help raise the vibration. What do I mean by that? It may mean just that their energetic makeup is of a certain nature to help raise the vibration of the planet. Doesn't mean they have to be some sort of, activist or invent something or create a cure for something. That's not what I mean. It's something about their energy and how they're able to connect in with the planet and to be able to stay connected to the cosmos as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm being guided to talk about this particular way of how I'm just recently starting to work with connecting with the energy of the earth. So grounding. And let's just
Oh,
talk
yeah,
about
I
that
love that. I
in
talk about that
relation
a
to this.
lot.
So grounding, typically we talk about, being centered and connecting with the energy of the earth and feeling, peaceful and in present time. What I am finding now is there's a way to connect even more deeply. And it's about learning how to connect to our original grounding, the grounding basically contract we created in our birth contract before we actually got here. So this grounding cord actually starts when you're in your birth mother's womb. So at the very tail end of the pregnancy, you create this grounding cord. You basically have a landing pad, a grounding pad in the center of the earth.
Mm-hmm.
And this is fun because it's the first time I'm really talking about this in public right here with you, Michelle, on
Oh,
this
awesome.
podcast. I'm excited about this. But as we learn about this original landing pad and how to tap into it, it really helps us to fine tune our grounding. It affects our physical health,
Mm-hmm.
definitely increases it. It increases our intuition, increases our well being just in general. And the reason I'm bringing this up is it's very important for mothers to be to have this understanding of connecting with their original grounding, because it's going to be easier for these higher vibration spirit babies to come through when the moms are really connected to their original grounding. And I teach people how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a process, but it's really not that challenging. It's not that difficult. It's just a different way of looking at grounding. It's a different way of allowing ourselves to connect on that deeper level. But once we're connected more deeply with our own original grounding, sometimes that means bringing things in because we didn't come in with our full grounding to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's easier for us to invite these higher vibration spirit babies in so that they can be sure to connect with their original grounding when they come in, which is going to allow them to stay on their soul's journey more easily.
Mm-hmm.
So that's cool. I'm so glad I was guided to share that right here. So these spirit babies that are coming in right now, as I mentioned earlier, it could be anywhere on the planet. It's not just in the United States or just in Europe or just in Australia. It is all over the planet that I see these little lights for these spirit babies to want to come into these families. If you feel guided to go and look at things from a more energetic or spiritual perspective, I highly recommend it. It is such a beautiful gift to bring in our children when we allow that body aspect of the things, the physical aspect, the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual aspects all to come together. It's a holistic approach
Mm-hmm.
of being
Yeah,
able to bring in your child. And the Western medicine medical community has the physical part down. That's,
correct. Yeah.
getting into the emotional and mental aspects. The
Mm-hmm.
spiritual aspect, up until now, it's not quite integrated there, which is wonderful to have people like you and I who are
Mm-hmm.
interested in this spiritual aspect of things as well, open to it. Bringing in these spiritual beings, I am finding that they are wanting the birth moms to be at a higher vibration themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So that is doing what I like to call energetic hygiene on a daily basis, becoming more aware of your limiting beliefs and finding ways to work through those, because they're very heavy energy, typically, these limiting beliefs, and they can create blocks to bringing our beautiful spirit babies here. But these babies have missions. Some of them will potentially be activists. Some of them will potentially create inventions, might be for the environment, might be for, lots of other things. It could be in the bioengineering field. It could be anywhere. But they are coming in. I'm all tingly as I talk about this, which is always a good sign. They are coming in with a mission. The more that our worldview as parents is open to this, the more it's going to be easier for these babies to fulfill their mission. I also want to add in, it is normal when the kids get here, at some point, they just want to fit in. So they may go off their path for a while just so they can try and fit in to the culture, knowing that they're never going to really fit in. And then later they're going to figure out, oh, wait, I don't really fit in. And then they're going to open up. Just know that that tends to be a pretty common trajectory for these higher vibration souls that I see. It can be challenging as a parent to watch, our children go through these periods of their lives where they feel maybe lost and aren't as connected with source. But yeah. Anything you'd like to say about that, or any questions you have around anything?
There were things that were coming to my mind, and as you were talking about, just the presence itself can change a frequency, and it's true. People can walk into a room, you can feel an energy, you can feel a presence, and I love and I have no idea who said this, but I love the quote, "You convince with your presence." I don't know who said it, but I'll probably look it up after. But it's true. I mean, just the presence itself is so powerful. And it's kind of like this yin vibration versus yang, which is like the doer and both can be the case, but both are very much needed. And also what you were talking about with the spirit, Chinese medicine, one of the things that they do consider is the spirit. So that goes into part of the whole diagnosis, looking at how the spirit gets impacted by the organ state. And all of those things are kind of this part of a whole, like a more holistic thing. So a lot of what you were saying was resonating with me. And it's interesting because you could see it, like those same truths coming out in different forms. So you'll sometimes see it in different religions or different modalities, but all of those things pretty much teach that same essence.
And this is fascinating. So several things are coming to me as you're talking. It really is. We are getting to a point where we are tapping into the wisdom that we already have on the planet through these different traditions.
Yeah.
Different things are starting to come out into the public more and more. Even things that have never been in the public before are starting to arise and become, at least in the esoteric realms, more known. And it's really exciting. And the other thing I wanted to touch upon was when you were talking about the yin and the yang, right? And what I truly feel is we've gone through this period of time, and especially as women, where we had that kind of fight energy. We had that very masculine driven. And I think it was necessary to get us to the point we're at now. I do feel like there is a call for many of us to bring in this divine feminine energy, this much more wise, gentle approach, not the, very like fight kind of energy. It's more of this knowing how to hold the space, knowing how to allow things to come to us, that receive mode. It's more of that being than the doing, right? I love the phrase, we're a human being, not a human doing, right?
Yes.
I don't know, I don't remember who said that, but I love that phrase. it's much more about the beingness. And I am finding that I personally am more drawn to the practitioners who are at a point in their career where they have the wisdom that they don't have to use the all the warrior fight energy. They have more of that knowing sense, that presence, the compassion, because of all they've been through. So I do feel like we're at this tail end of this. Oh, you have some of these amazing practitioners who are like, let's just get out there, or spiritual teachers. Got to do this. I think we're at the tail end of that, going into this more yin time is what
Yeah.
I feel.
Yeah, and
That's
it's interesting because sometimes with that yin, it's almost like this realization that you already have power, you have so much already just with your presence, just with your stillness. You don't need to do, it's like do less. You don't need to do as much. It's this compensation that we think we need to do in order to get anything done, but it's actually quite the opposite, that sometimes just our being is enough. That's it.
This was something, it took me a very long time to integrate into me. And I remember I call my guides, the people in the spirit realm that I connect with, I call them the higher ups. So
Hmm.
convening with the higher ups. And on many occasions, they just said, Nancy, your energy is just needed on the planet. There's nothing you need to do. And this perfectionistic tendency that the personality I brought in this lifetime's, but wait, what can I do? I've got to be able to
Yeah.
do something. And it was such a beautiful lesson for me to know that our presence is enough,
Hmm.
especially when we come from a state of integrity, a state of being present. And that actually is my theme for this calendar year. I had a different theme, and here I am, and I changed it at a few days into 2023. I the the theme for me is all about presence. How present am I in each and every moment? And when I'm not fully present, can I bring myself back to be in the present moment? That's where we're going to see the biggest difference. That's where our own energy, each of us, has our power. It's in the now,
Hmm.
not in the past. It's not in the future. It's in this now moment. And the more of us that can bring our energy into this now moment and connect into that grounding, like I was talking about earlier, the energy on this planet, we're going to see things transform much more quickly and much more easily than we could ever imagine. That is really where our power is. And the more of us that do that, we're going to
Yes.
expand and evolve much more quickly than we could ever even imagine. And it doesn't need to be a ton of us. That's the cool thing.
Yeah.
It is a certain percentage of us to become, I'm going to say, awake enough
Hmm.
to to tap in and be present to what's happening. And that's what I also feel like so many of these spirit babies these days are wanting to help with. They're here to help light us up, get us on our path again. That's what a lot of women come to me for, is they're not on their path. They're having so many issues. They don't understand that they're not on their path. And but if our life is not joyful, we're not connecting with our higher
Yes.
self. We're
Oh
not
my God.
fully on our path.
Totally.
Yeah.
And as you were talking about presence, I'm thinking about the spirit of the egg, because look at what the egg does. It's present, it stays, it doesn't go and move, it stays. And it actually, doesn't it? It has a vibration or a sound to attract the sperm. And then it picks the sperm, it hangs back and says, which one do I want? And
And
allows it in.
I'm so tingly as you say this. It is that yin, right? The power of the yin to draw to it what
Correct.
it needs and what it desires, what's for its best and highest good.
Correct.
And I love that analogy for us to move forward with.
Mm-hmm.
to can we be like that beautiful egg and be here, be present, and have the awareness level to allow things to come to us, to
Right.
understand what our body's talking about, because our body is always letting us know if it's a yes or a no.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Constantly. It's, do we slow down enough and become present enough to listen? Or do we choose to listen? We may hear it or
That's
notice
true. That's a
enough,
good point.
and we just keep going.
I was at a Dr. Joe Dispenza retreat. I talk about him often because I was so moved by this week-long retreat. And he talks about that. He talks about the quantum field, which, the sages used to talk about, nirvana, or getting to this place of kind of stillness of the no self, and where it's more etheric. You're connecting really to the source. And that's really what it sounds like. I mean, everybody has a different name for it. And it's interesting because science is able to measure some of it now, but he always says, don't wait for science to be unlimited. Or what I probably butcher every every quote, but it's something to that effect. And he says, and he says that there's two different ways of being. I mean, there's so many different dimensions. You can make a choice, and all of them are right. They're just different. So one of them, if we're living in this particle like material world where we just respond to material things that happen to us and work on that level, that's kind of like the I need to see it to believe it kind of mentality. I need to, you need to prove it to me. I won't. And I think to myself, it's interesting because like we don't need somebody to prove to us that love exists. We know that it exists. So we kind of can't make everything about material and like being proven, because some things are just not in their nature meant to be like proven, dissected, and I think that that's where I'm hoping we're going to go as a collective to understand that, and not to just rely on the material world. And so he says, yes, you can be in that dimension. It's like that 3D dimension where it takes you longer to go from point A to point B. You have to do a lot more work. It's more dense. Or if you get into this higher dimension, you can actually get to this higher state mentally where you are drawing it to you, and you just sit there, and both are correct. And if you keep doing your life in 3D where you have to work, and you've seen that over and over again, that proves to be correct, 100% you're right. But it's a choice. It is a choice. To be here or to be there is a choice. And when you are in this higher dimension, things get done faster, more effortless, and easy with flow.
Absolutely. And I love that you're talking about the quantum field, because when I work with people in a spirit baby reading and just in general, I always mention that that's how I work, is I work with the quantum field. So what I'm saying right now isn't set in stone. Like this is constantly changing based on anything you think, anything you do can shift the pattern. There is a movie, it's a blockbuster movie from, I don't know how long ago, but a while back, called The Adjustment Bureau. And it's very action-packed, definitely not a relaxing movie, but it's very action-packed. And what I love about it is as the characters make a certain decision, you see all these lines starting to move. And that's exactly how to me, in a sense, this is a replica or an idea of how the quantum field works, right? As soon as we make a certain choice, all the lines are going to shift. Like that certain trajectory we were on is now in a different way. And I love using that analogy, and I love the movie because it shows us visually in the movie format that, wow, one difference in the way we think or what we do can make a big difference in our lives. When it comes to the spirit babies, being able to connect with these higher dimensions makes it easier. These spirit babies reside in a higher dimension. They're not at this present moment here in this third dimension. the babies who are interested in coming to Earth are interested in coming into this third dimension. So we need to understand that there are these different dimensions and these different vibrations. But when I get this question all the time, how can I communicate with my spirit baby? Or how do I, how am I able to connect with them more? Imagine it's like a TV channel or a radio station, right? You cannot, if you're trying to connect down here in this 3D world, it's like CNN, if you will, in terms of, like a TV station. If you want to get to the nature channel and you're tuned into CNN, you can't get to the nature channel. You got to change the channel. So for the spirit babies, you need to be able to learn how to change the channel to get up to communicate with them more. What I like to encourage the spirit babies and the people that I work with to do is, okay, let's find a middle ground. Can the spirit babies come down a little bit? Can we go up at least a little bit and get into a bandwidth where there's several stations that we can connect on? For some of us, one of those stations might be a feeling sense. Another one of those stations may be something we see, a visual sense. Still another channel might be an auditory sense. Some of us might get a buzzing in the ear. Some of us may, and that is typically a spirit, unless it's like tinnitus or something. Then, right. But typically it's a spirit. Yeah. If it's a buzzing in your ear, and that's related to clairaudience. So clear hearing, things that are not necessarily in the auditory realm for humans, but the clear hearing can come through as you wake up, or you just all of a sudden are singing a song. Why is a song popping into my head? That's one of the ways you can get auditory information from the spirit realm. So you can learn to tap into these different channels, and there's more, but that gives you an idea of, oh, wow, maybe I am connecting with my spirit baby and I didn't even know it. That I get that a lot too. People, especially with the buzzing, they have no idea what that is, but it is an indication of clairaudience for many of us.
That's pretty wild. It's so interesting.
I do want to talk about the losses, because I do feel like pregnancy loss, whether it's, any form of loss, it could be, a miscarriage, it could be a termination, it could be a stillbirth, it could be a loss even after a child is here. When there is a loss, there's a reason for it that is beyond what our cognitive mind can fathom. I'm getting tingly as I'm talking about this, this is just an important thing, I think, for all of us to hear and to sit with, and to let our bodies let us know if this resonates with us or not. When we realize that these beings that are coming in, whether it is a miscarriage or whether it is, a termination, wherever it is on that spectrum, there's a soul that's coming in, and there's a connection with that soul. If we acknowledge these souls for the time that they can't come in, we thank them for coming in for that short amount of time, which seems short for us in this human life. And we can get to a place where there is some appreciation for that spiritual side of things. It can help people heal more quickly. Mm-hmm. I like to call this an honoring ceremony, and I encourage the clients I work with who have gone through any sort of loss to do an honoring ceremony with each loss. So a separate one. If you're with the partner where you had that loss, and see if that partner is interested in doing this ceremony with you. Doesn't have to be called a ceremony. I just call it that. And it could be, this ceremony could be 2 minutes. It could be 2 hours. You could do it outside by a tree. You can do it inside. Doesn't really matter. It's much more about the intention. And in these sorts of ceremonies, what I recommend is just really saying a beautiful hello to this soul, to this spirit, thanking them for coming for that short amount of time, letting them know that you realize there are lessons that both you have learned and that soul is learning. And that, there's a lot of things you can do from there. When we miss that step in our healing process, I feel like it takes a lot longer.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to mention something in particular about abortions because I get a lot of questions about this. And this is my understanding. So this is how I see it and how it works in my realm with the way I work with the energy. When there is an abortion, I truly feel that the soul knows and there's an agreement and the soul is okay leaving. They may want to come back and they may not want to come back. Every soul is going to be different and have a different choice. I do feel like there is always, I just want to reiterate this, there's always an agreement because so many people I find have so much guilt, especially about abortions.
Yeah.
And from my perspective, it's a very, it can actually be a really beautiful healing for that particular spirit. And I would like to share actually a personal experience to explain that. I was pregnant with a spirit baby, and it took us a long time to get pregnant. We knew that she had had a lot of past lives with a lot of trauma, and she wanted to be with me because she knew that I'd be able to understand her. She came in, miscarried, and I was devastated.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't want to do that again. So she didn't come for a couple of years. And I didn't know why. I thought I was doing something wrong. And then I met Walter McKitchen, who wrote that Spirit Babies book. And bless his heart for him sharing with me that, Nancy, you were so connected with this baby. It was like losing a spouse. So once I realized that, I was able to help with that loss. And then through some work with Walter, we were able to work with the spirit baby. We realized she was really hung up with some of her own karma, her own stuff from past lives. She had had a lot of lifetimes where she was very isolated. She chose bodies or lifetimes, maybe with mental illness or other severe traumas where she wasn't integrated into the community. And this lifetime, she really wanted to be integrated in the community. She had chosen a body that was going to miscarry and that was not healthy. So we knew that working on a healthy physical body was big for her. So through all this work that I did with Walter McKitchen, we got to a point where the baby was like, yeah, I'll come in. I'm going to have this great, beautiful body and it's going to be very healthy. She came in. I got pregnant right away at that point, and everything seemed fine until it wasn't. We went in and we had some genetic testing because we knew that my partner and I at the time we both had cystic fibrosis genes. So we knew that we could potentially create a baby that had cystic fibrosis, and we just wanted to be aware.
Yeah.
And in that, all the genetic testing, we found out that this baby had chosen a body with Down syndrome. And we knew from her past lives that she didn't want to do another lifetime where she wasn't going to be able to integrate into the culture. So we as a family chose to abort and terminate this pregnancy. And for me, I've never thought twice about it. To me, it felt like the most loving thing we could do for this particular soul. We told her she could come back as our grandchild. She could come back in another lifetime. We just wanted her to be able to have the life that she really wanted for herself. So I want to add that because there's a lot of different ways to look at these sorts of losses. And sometimes they truly are a big gift for that particular soul.
Yeah, I know. I've spoken to a lot of my patients, and sometimes, some of them were teenagers. I mean, there's no way they would have been able to sustain and have the babies. And so we definitely worked on creating some kind of sacred ceremony or something just to honor. Still, it's a loss, and they were carrying it. somehow in their subconscious mind, even though they wanted to, they knew they had to do it, and they still kind of went back. And so getting to that place of peace with that, or any loss really, is so important. And I oftentimes tell people, similarly to what you're saying, is to create like a ceremony or to write a letter to the souls, because it gives, there's this kind of like emotional tie, but emotional meaning like you're being tied by a heavy emotion that's not letting go. And you could still have, you're always going to be connected to the spirit, but it's important to really resolve that. It can really hold you back emotionally. And people do feel a sense of liberation, even though it's hard. And even when I bring this up for them to do, they start crying. And I know that that's going to happen. I'm like, I'm sorry. I don't mean to bring up like emotions, because I know that it could be tough, and not everybody's always ready for it. And I always say, if you're ready, but they say, no, a lot of times it's like, it actually really feels good to do that. Like to think of doing that, because it's sacred. Every life is sacred. And to be able to give it some kind of closure or some kind of communication, and to acknowledge the spirit in some form, is really healing. And it works almost like this full circle sacred moment where people are able to really acknowledge and then continue on.
Yeah. And I love how you talked about this full circle sacred moment, because that's exactly what we're trying to get to with having this closure with these beautiful beings. Closure in this chapter, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that we can
Yeah.
create a new chapter. And like I mentioned earlier, sometimes these souls come back. Sometimes they're not going to come back in this particular lifetime or with us.
Mm-hmm.
It really depends on a lot of factors. And that's one of the fun things I look at in when I'm working with clients. Uh, yeah.
Yeah.
Anything you want to delve into more of? Because there's so many different ways we could go.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about, actually, it's interesting because I do find that some people, it's random though. I always say it's great to write a letter to your spirit baby, or to connect or ask for signs or thoughts or downloads on what, even advice, almost like what, because ultimately you're housing that body. And so I do often say that, and just kind of putting that intention out there. And what I find is that sometimes automatic writing is another way to allow for the wisdom to come through. It's really interesting how that works. It doesn't feel like it's going to work when you first think of doing it. But when you write down that question and all of a sudden you have thoughts and you're just writing stuff down, you're like, oh my God, I didn't write this. This is coming from somewhere else.
That's such a cool experience. And I'm loving that you're bringing this up, because when we give ourselves permission to do these things, you can tap into these different channels. And this is another way, a different type of channel, if you will, this very automatic writing. It's a way to tap into the wisdom, tap into that energy field to bring it into the 3D realm so that we can incorporate it, we can digest it, and we can follow it. And
Yeah.
I see this a lot. And I love that you talk about this with your patients. And I love, because I do this with my clients as well. I was talking with someone just yesterday about, she happened to be pregnant, and I was mentioning to her that, when you are pregnant, your grounding is going to want to shift at some point, because your baby is going to want you to hold the energy in a certain way. And she also was talking about nutrition with me, and she tended to be plant-based. And she's like, well, I'm open to whatever, but the plant-based has really worked for me. And it was very clear, and she felt this too, that her baby was going to want potentially some animal protein added in.
Mm-hmm.
So having these ways, I love through automatic writing or however that information is going to come to you. It could be through that felt sense in your body. You might see things, you might hear things, but the automatic writing is another beautiful way to tap into those things. When you are tapping into your future child, you may just all of a sudden have a thought, and that could potentially be from your spirit baby. And it could be about a certain practitioner to work with, or to leave a certain practitioner, or to start eating a certain way, or to not interact with a certain person. Or there's so many different things, and they can very well be these messages from our future children. And that's when I love asking people, do you feel like you connect with your future child? And oftentimes I get, I don't know, I don't think so, I think I'm making this up. Our intuition is that first instinct. It's that first sense. So when we're writing, even in this automatic writing sense, it's like, okay, let's just keep going. Even if I don't know what I want to say, you just keep writing. And it gets us into these basically altered states without us even noticing it. And it can be a very powerful way to bring information in. And absolutely, these spirit babies will bring you information that way. And I want to mention, every spirit baby tends to have different methods that they like to communicate with you.
Just like
through.
People.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And a lot of it depends on their style, and they will, and then your style, and how to find that happy medium, how to negotiate so that you're both able to get your points across. Other part I like to talk when but I keep talking to my spirit baby, but I'm not getting anything. Another analogy I like to use is when you use your smartphone to make a call, does someone always answer?
Right. That's good.
No. Sometimes we leave a message. Sometimes we just hang up and we'll call back. So please know that's also with the spirit babies. Sometimes they're not just right there waiting for you to connect. A lot of times they are, but sometimes they aren't. So if you were feeling that, leave a message and then just keep calling back.
Yeah.
I want to circle back to this receive mode, kind of that yin place, because this is one of the places that can be a block for folks in terms of being able to receive the information from their spirit baby. Do you even give yourself permission? And not on the cognitive level, we're talking subconscious, unconscious realms. Are you willing to give yourself more permission to connect with the spirit baby realm? A lot of women, I think, feel like, oh yeah, sure, I want to talk to my future child. But really, when we get in there, they don't trust in the energy and the way the universe works. Yep. They want to control things. And believe me, been there, done that, had many decades of that this lifetime. And when we get to a point of trusting the universe more, it's much easier for us to connect with ourselves, that essence, that higher self aspect of us, that wise part of us. And it's easier for us to connect with our spirit babies.
So it's an acknowledgement, really, that there is something else. And I think that what it is, and we talked about this even in the pre-talk, because you were talking about etheric, sometimes I find too, like I almost have to feel it out. Is it okay to talk about something that's usually not talked about or is not really an acceptable reality? And I think that we get so identified and so connected with this 3D world, which has a place, but it's not the only thing out there. And there was a time where meditation wasn't even acknowledged as whatever the ancients said was like, it was woo-woo, all these things that now they're seeing that visualizations actually make a difference physiologically. They can increase your muscle mass without you exercising, just by visualizing it. So they're actually seeing that a lot of these things have something to it. And we have such a powerful instrument. We ourselves as humans are powerful instruments. And I think it's because we are not our bodies. And acknowledging that really comes down to acknowledging it, acknowledging that power that we have, acknowledging that there is this eternal energy that we can recognize in each other's eyes, which is, I think, one of the reasons why loss is so hard for people, because you connect with this eternal aspect of a person, of their true selves. And it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense that that eternal essence that you feel with another being is gone, and it's not gone. It's just their bodies. It's shifted to another place. So when you acknowledge that there is something way more vast, it's too sacred for science. Science has a place. This is too vast and too sacred to put in a lab. And I think that when we acknowledge that, and we don't have to do much, we can still have proof when we meditate, when we connect with ourselves, because we can experience that, just like we can prove that love exists without looking and dissecting it. It's the same thing. So when we acknowledge that, that's when we're able to truly connect. But if we get so hung up on this dense material world and that being all that is, of course, we're just staying in that dial, and not leaving.
It's absolutely true. And I love that you're talking about this essence, this eternal part of us. And that is when there is a loss, when you can, to remember that you always have the opportunity to connect in with that eternal part of that other soul, right? You can absolutely do that. And it's such an important aspect of things. And I know for me, being authentic, right? Starting to talk about these more esoteric, what the collective as a whole considers more esoteric. I know my guidance these days from my higher ups is, Nancy, just be yourself.
Yeah.
Just talk about whatever comes out, and people are either going to resonate with it or not.
Exactly.
And, sometimes it is like planting a seed for people, and then you nurture that seed over time. They come into different situations, like, oh wow, Nancy and Michelle were just talking about this, and oh wow, okay, now I'm hearing it over here, and oh wow, now I'm hearing it over here.
Yeah.
And then they grow
Yeah.
into being able to bring this more and more into their worldview and accept it as what is really true.
Amazing. Yeah. Well, I could talk to you for hours, and I'm just realizing we've been talking for an hour. Wow. It's such great conversation. I love talking about things like this. Because it seems more vast, and it's like sacred, I guess, sacred aspects of ourselves, really. And hopefully we're moving in that direction as a collective and starting to realize our sacredness as human beings, and really the sacredness of bringing in these spirit babies and that channel that we truly are. So for people who want to work with you, how can they find you?
The best way to find me is to go to my website, which is nancymae.com. So nancymae.com. You can also find me on TikTok at Energetic Fertility. And then you can also find me on Instagram at Nancy_May_EFM. So those are the three best ways to find information about how I work. You can find out about my book, The Energetic Fertility Method. It's on Amazon, easy to find there. Lots of ways to find me.
Awesome. Well, yeah. Nancy, I'll have all the information on the episode notes. So if anybody wants to find it, they can go ahead and find it there. And Nancy, it is always a pleasure talking to you. I just love our conversations. They're so much fun. And again, I could talk to you for hours. So thank you so much for coming on.
And thank you so much, Michelle. Total ditto. I feel the same way. It's just fun connecting with you. And thank you so much for the work that you do. It's just an honor to know you and to know that you're here on this planet at this time. So thank you.
So that concludes today's episode. You can find all of the links mentioned on the episode notes. If you're enjoying these episodes, please take a moment to share and leave a review. Reviews mean everything to podcasters, and I really enjoy hearing from my listeners. You can also find me on my website at www.thewholesomelotus.com or email me at info@thewholesomelotus.com. I love hearing from my listeners. If you're interested and want updates as well as a free ebook on my top 10 fertility boosting habits, you can visit my fertility page on www.thewholesomelotus.com. I thank you so much for listening in and hope that you have a beautiful day.